We expect other nations to respect Ukraine's sovereignty and avoid provocative actions. That's why I'm closely watching Russia's military exercises along the Ukrainian border, which they announced, as you know, yesterday. I expect Russia to be transparent about these activities, and I urge them not to take any steps that could be misinterpreted or lead to miscalculation during a very delicate time, a time of great tension.
Okay, that's probably a very good way to describe it. Welcome back, Steve Malzberg. We're joined right now by General Michael Hayden, former director of the CIA, former director of the NSA. Hello, sir.
Hey, Steve. How are you?
Good, thank you. Always great to talk to you. So, you know, when is, first of all, before we get to what was said exactly and how much it means and how Russia might react, when's the last time a U.S. Defense Secretary had if you want to call it a warning, for Russia?
Yeah, actually, it's been quite a while, and it's kind of, you know, Back to the Future or something like that, isn't it? Now, Steve, really important. I mean, the Russian army invaded Georgia in August of 2008, basically because of the same kind of disputes we're seeing here, occupied up there. And so they've got a bit of a track record in what they call the near abroad when they want to work their will.
Yeah. And all right. So with that as the backdrop and putting all that as the context, what Chuck Hagel said and what John Kerry said yesterday, and for Hagel to say we're closely watching, I mean, what would we do if they, you know, move across the border?
Well, I think Georgia was an easier problem under a different president, and there wasn't much we could do. I was in government then. I mean, we certainly complained. We certainly tried to impose a cost on the Russians for doing this, but they went ahead and did it. And it wasn't like we had any military options that would get in their way. Look, Secretary of Defense seems to be saying all the right things. Those are very cautious, but right things. Those are very cautious, but thoughtful words. I'm a little puzzled, though. The sex from him is talking about this as, you know, this can be win-win. It's not a return to the Cold War. Yeah, we can think it's win-win, but I got to tell you, Steve, Vladimir Putin thinks this is a zero-sum game.
Yeah.
And I think we need to kind of play it a little more like zero-sum. I don't mean to criticize anyone, but I read a quote late last week talking about how the Europeans were dealing with Ukraine, and the quote was, "They're bringing a baguette to a knife fight."
Yeah, yeah, that's very apropos. Win-win. I mean, I can't even fathom what he could possibly mean by that.
Well, I mean, the first win is the will of the Ukrainian people has to be respected. That's number one.
Right.
I mean, these people cannot be coerced. Now, that's important. Number two, look, Russia has legitimate interests in the Ukraine. It's a big neighboring state. But that's different from saying they get to work their will on Ukraine. And I guess the third point to be made is everyone's got to be careful. This is a fragile state. I mean, you've kind of got a Ukrainian-Russian divide, east-west. You've got one of the Russians' biggest fleets home ported on the Crimea, which is part of the Ukraine. And so, you know, the last thing we need is this place disintegrating along ethnic lines.
Well, in the Crimea today, at the Parliament building and government building, gunmen broke in. I don't know, you might know, but I'm not sure who the gunmen are. They're not saying, and raised the Russian flag atop the buildings. What significance does that show?
Well, the population of the Crimea is overwhelmingly Russian, and in fact, historically, it is Russian. Nikita Khrushchev, who was Ukrainian, back in the mid-'50s, because of internal Russian bureaucratic politics, decided to give control of the control of the Crimea over to the Ukrainian Republic within the old Soviet Union. That's an administrative change. It doesn't change people's hearts, minds, or language. And so that is a thoroughly Russian area.
Yeah, no, it's very frightening. And what do you make of the ship, the Russian warship docked in Havana?
You know, this is news that you're reporting to me, but you know what you've got is Putin trying to reassert kind of the old Soviet worldview.
It's the Victor
Federation.
It's the Victor Leninov, a CCB 175 boat, 91.5 meters, and it was docked at the port of Havana cruise ship area near the Russian Orthodox Cathedral.
Okay, well, I mean, it's the kind of behavior we've been saying from Putin. But Steve, to be really candid, I mean, Putin is acting like he's playing cards with a full house. And frankly, given the status of the Russian state, he's probably got about a pair of eights in his hands. And so we need to keep in mind that this is not the Soviet Union, and despite all of his bluster, he doesn't have the wherewithal that the Soviet state had. And I guess that's my way of saying from time to time we need to stand up to him. Remember I began our conversation, Steve, talking about Georgia?
Yeah.
And how bad that was?
Yep.
Well, you know what? Everybody forgave him for Georgia. There were no real lasting consequences for doing that, and as soon as the current administration came in, it was all about reset, which means what? The invasion of Georgia is in August. By January the next year, we're talking reset. I mean, so it's not as if we went out of our way to express deep displeasure for what the Russians did in Georgia, and now here we are afraid they might do it again in the Ukraine, which would be a far more serious matter, as you know.
And if there is more Russian aggression here, how much does that hurt Hillary Clinton running for president? Because she was just, she was all part of that whole reset, obviously.
Well, yes, and that's right. And again, I've been in the sit room, I've been in these meetings. These are hard decisions. But I have to tell you, from the outside looking in, to my eye, the Russian reset comprised a series of American concessions to the Russian state, for which we did not get a whole lot.
Yeah, no, absolutely. All right, let me ask you about another area of concern. Obviously, Afghanistan. The president asking the Pentagon 2 days ago for a plan to get out totally by the end of the year, but of course leaving open the option to keep some troops there. So, which way do you think it'll go? I mean, because Karzai's the wild card here, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's a wild card, but he's got a shelf life, and that's going to go away in about 6 to 7 weeks. And I have full expectation that the next president, whomever he might be, is going to sign this thing at the speed of light, because everyone with any sense of responsibility in Afghanistan knows that you need the Americans, you need the West for the continued survival of themselves and the Afghan state. So I understand why the president made the call, but frankly, Karzai's yesterday's news.
I want to ask you, you made a remark I remember hearing or reading very recently about the 1%. And you were, I think you were angry at this talk of the 1%, meaning the wealthiest. But you and I think George Bush the other day also called the 1% the men and women who serve our military, and they're the ones, that's the 1% we should be talking about. That's what he said. I think that's what you echoed, correct?
That's exactly what I said. I mean, the line I used this morning was that you realize that 1% has a different meaning for folks like us. In this case, you realize that 1% of this country's population has been defending the other 99% of this country's population for more than a dozen years. And what's really sad, Steve, it's been kind of a it's been kind of a permanent 1% and a permanent 99%. The benefit cuts coming after the folks in the armed forces, which well, I have to admit, I mean, the personnel costs are skyrocketing. Secretary Hagel's got to do something. And so I understand that you've got to bend that curve down on personnel costs. But isn't it odd that we're taking away the entitlements of those who have truly served the nation, and the administration doesn't have the courage to take on the overall question of entitlements for the other 99%?
Yep, it is odd, it is pathetic, it is a disgrace. You're absolutely right, sir. Hey, always great to talk to you, General. Thank you so much.
Okay, Steve, thank you.
Take care. That's General Hayden, Michael Hayden, of course, former director of the CIA, former director of the NSA, and we love talking to him because here's a man who knows. And the situation, it's going to be very, very interesting to watch how it progresses over the next couple of days. Certainly around Ukraine, on the border, the Russian exercises, and see where that ship heads. How soon it gets the heck out of the border with, not the border, but the port in Havana. All right, folks, we have one final segment left in this edition of the Steve Malzberg Show, and we're coming back with it. I promise you're not going to want to miss it. Right here, Steve Malzberg on Newsmax Television.
The Steve Malzberg Show.